Hey everybody, Madison here with Health by Ratio. We are a completely online group of licensed physical therapists, corrective exercise specialists, functional health coaches, and we all work as a team to holistically support our clients in moving away from recurring pains and injuries and progressing in their health and fitness goals. So, one of the things that we have to help people with all the time with is mobility. It's actually kind of the first step in getting someone, well, technically the second step. The first step is analyzing their body and figuring out where their how their body moves and why it's doing what it's doing and where any imbalances are. That was actually what we talked about in the last video. That's an important step because we got to figure out what's out of whack, what's lacking range of motion, all that good stuff, so then we know what to mobilize versus what to strengthen. That's an important step. But then in terms of practical application, like what are the techniques we got to do, the first one that we really need to tackle is mobility for at least most of our clients. Because if there is an imbalance, if we are seeing there a glaring range of motion issue from one side to the other, and the body isn't able to move in the full ranges of motion that we need it to, well, then we better fix that first, because it doesn't matter how many exercises we try to do. If the body can't do the range of motion to properly do the exercises, well, then we kind of wasted our time. And the impetus of this video this week is because I just finished this month probably about half a dozen reassessments with our clients, and we specifically talked about we were looking at their hamstring in this particular assessment, and the hamstrings on so many of us are tight like crazy, right? Like everyone feels like they have tight hamstrings, and we all associate tight hamstrings with back pain and whatnot. But even if we don't have back pain, like tight hamstrings is everything. Everybody feels like that. We're always trying to bend over and touch our toes or trying to prop a foot up and stretch out our hamstrings, yet they're perpetually always tight. Well, that is there's multiple reasons for that. Often there are some other tissues in the body, maybe the hip flexors, maybe stuff going on in the calves and the feet, that might be causing some of this hamstring tightness. But it's still something that we got to mobilize directly for many of our clients. And for these half dozen clients that I was keying in on, they all did what's called an active straight leg raise with regards to our assessment. So they went into a position where they were laying down on their back and they did a straight leg raise up as high as they possibly can and then set that leg down. They weren't able to actually raise their leg up beyond their knee. So if we took an imaginary line and went straight up that knee, the opposite knee, they weren't able to clear that knee with their leg as they raised it up when we first got started. And often, for many of these half dozen clients that we reassessed over this last month, they had one leg that was really tight, and then the other leg was much further than that. So they had a big asymmetry. All of them on their reassessments were able to get their legs almost to at least 80 degrees, if not 90 degrees. They had full range of motion on either leg where they were able to bring it up. Well, how did they do that? These were people that have been that like for decades they've had tight hamstrings. They haven't been able to mobilize these things. They've stretched like crazy. For everyone from individuals that practice yoga to runners to tennis players, but like active individuals that did dynamic warm-ups and all kinds of stuff. Yet they were still chronically tight and asymmetrical when they got started, and a reassessment for us happens like 6 to 8 weeks later into their program, if not even sooner. And so within just a couple of months, they made changes that they hadn't been able to do their entire lives. Well, what was the secret? What did we do? The secret was not stretching. The stretching is okay. It's not that stretching is brutal for the body, but it's not the main focus when we have some serious gunked up tension. When we have some serious gunked up tension, that means that we have potentially some fascial restrictions. For those of you that don't know what fascia is, it is a connective tissue that is running like a big gigantic web all throughout your body. You ever looked at raw chicken and you see that like webbing that's along the breast and intertwined throughout that muscle tissue? Yeah, a chicken breast, that is a lines of fascia that you see, those stringy white lines. Well, we have that stuff all over the body. And when it's pliable, when it's hydrated, when it's gliding the way that it should, then it's great. It has all this elasticity, it has all this power potential in it, all this good stuff. It helps keep our body in place. But when it's sticky, when it's stuck together, when it's gunked up, when it doesn't get good hydration, or when it gets overused, or we get it knotted up, or whatever, maybe we get an injury and it turns into scar tissue. Scar tissue is just fascia that's grown back in these weird rat's nest kind of looking things. Well, when we get that, those fascial restrictions are super dense. It's actually the second densest substance in the body next to bone. So you can pull on it all you want, but it's not really going to expand. And a really good illustration to this is Katie Bowman in her book Move Your DNA. She talks about how if you want to visualize stretching out tissue that has no fascial restrictions, that's like getting a cotton shirt and stretching it, pulling it. It has a certain amount of elasticity as it's going there. But if you have fascial restrictions, that's like taking that same cotton shirt and taking a big swab of paint and putting it on to parts of that shirt, letting it dry, and now all of a sudden that paint is locking down those sections of fabric. Now we try to pull on this thing, and the paint isn't going to move. It's the other areas of the shirt that's trying to overcompensate and overstretch. But the actual areas that are tight that are impacting us don't get adjusted. So stretching by itself, for those of us that have like some real chronic tightnesses, which many of us do from the ways that we live our lives, whether it's the activities we do or the postures that we're in throughout the day, well, just stretching isn't going to really do the trick. So how do we fix that stuff? Well, that's where we can either hire out, we can get some great consistent deep tissue sports massages. Those are awesome. Get pampered, get some good work on the body. We can get a physical therapist or a chiropractor who does manual work on us to release these tensions. That's awesome too. Or we can do this stuff ourselves. And that's where this foam roller comes into play. That's where these trigger point balls come into play, where we can get into these nooks and crannies and we can find that hurts so good gunked up tissue that needs to be released. So how do we do this to the hamstring? Let's use it as an example. If I get something that I can sit on, that's step number one, and something relatively firm that I can sit on, because I don't want this to be soft, because if I put this ball underneath my leg to get my hamstring, the cushion will just sink down, so to speak. So I want to make sure that I actually get some firm feedback here. So a coffee table, a kitchen countertop, a dining room chair, or something like that, that can work. But then we want to get out either our trigger point balls. This can be a lacrosse ball. This is a peanut that I'm using. So this is like two lacrosse balls that are molded together. If you don't have that, you could use like a metal water bottle or something more acute like that, something firm on this. And we want to sit so that we have a nice bend in the knee here, so the hamstring's a little bit slack. I don't want to be sitting on the ground with the leg out. That'll pull the hamstring a little taut. I won't get as much deep tissue manipulation in it. And then I'm going to take my handy dandy trigger point tool and I'm going to place it somewhere, either from the back of the knee, or often we're going to get a lot of gunk right underneath the butt. And it can be more toward the inner thigh, like more toward this section, where I would place the ball down and then kind of rotate my leg out to the side. That's going to allow me to work more of the inner portion of the high hamstring. Or I can try this straight down, or I can turn the foot in a little bit and work more the lateral edge of the hamstring. Just explore. And what you're trying to find is anything that hurts so good. The rule of thumb is, if you are putting pressure on soft tissue, there is no soft tissue in your body that should hurt with a reasonable amount of pressure on it. Meaning, sitting on a foam roller or a trigger point ball, that shouldn't hurt. Getting crushed by a car, that's unreasonable amount of pressure. So that should hurt. But otherwise, just sitting on a ball or sitting on a trigger on a foam roller, there should be nothing that hurts on the body, or laying down on one of those things. There should be nothing that hurts. But for most of us, we could put this ball a million different places and it's like, oh my gosh, that hurts. Oh, that's uncomfortable. All that, like, and so we're trying to find anything that's like that hurts so good, 7 out of 10 on the Richter scale. We don't want this too painful. If we get it to like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, it's so intense, then I'm going to guard. It's going to be so gnarly. It's like getting one of those massages where they find like the worst knot on planet Earth and then they just drive their elbow and start killing you. You're like just cringing, clenching, trying to fight it and barely breathing. Like you're doing more damage than good in that moment. So we want to find like the 7 out of 10 where it's like, okay, this is tolerable. It's not comfortable, but it's tolerable. I'm not dying in this moment. And then I want to, wherever that hot spot is in this case, and this can be applied to any area of the body. You can use this rule of thumb for any area of the body, is you apply your pressure and first just breathe. Just breathe through your diaphragm a bit. We want to expand that belly, use some deep belly breathing here because that relaxes our nervous system, that calms us down a little bit. Then we're going to implement some blood flow techniques to this area because this fascial gunk or scar tissue or whatever it is that's stuck together, we need to break it up and we need to hydrate it. We need to get blood flow to it so that it can glide and grow back nice and pliable again. And then we can actually get the benefits of stretching because now we've busted up that paint swab, we busted up that gunk. So in this moment here, I'm going to do a contract and relax, and then I'm going to kind of scrub into this area, kind of massage it, knead it out, all that good stuff, and then rinse and repeat this. So how I'm going to contract this area is I can either just push my heel straight back into whatever I am sitting on, or I can kind of, if my foot's on the ground, I can kind of push my foot down and a little bit back into the ground, and that's going to engage my hamstring. When I do that, when I am engaging the body, I'm not going to put as much pressure on this ball that or this water bottle, whatever I'm using. When I'm tightening the muscle, I want to ease up off of it. I want it to feel, it's going to feel better. It shouldn't be as painful because I'm tightening the area and I'm taking pressure off of it. So it shouldn't be as painful. I'll hold that for about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to exhale and I'm going to relax into it, and then I'm going to push back into it, and I'm going to try to melt into this thing. And then we'll go through some movements to release it. And like I said, this doesn't have to be to just the hamstring. You could apply this to the calves. You could apply this to the quads. You could apply this to your back, your shoulders, your neck, all over the place. Same rule of thumb. If you're on soft tissue and it hurts, that means you found gunk. It's time to get into some breathing work to contract and relax and scrub and move into it and break this stuff up until it releases. We want it to go down from that like 7 out of 10 on that pain scale to like a 4 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10. It doesn't matter where it goes. We just want it to be less intense than when it started. Once it relaxes and releases a bit and it's not nearly as intense, time to move to the next spot, next area of the body. So let's go through this. We're going to take that deep belly breath in and we're going to hold it for about 5 seconds as we tighten up this area. So deep belly breath in. Tighten the area and push that foot a little bit down or a little bit back into the seat that you're in. Take a little bit of pressure off that and exhale. Relax into this. Press onto that area, apply that pressure. And now while I'm here, I'm going to start sliding my leg kind of side to side on this, across this ball in this case, and scrub into it, get some cross fiber friction. I can straighten out the leg and bend it to get a little bit of movement to this thing there. I can move the hips forward and backwards a little bit to knead into it. Now, I'm not trying to roll off the area. I'm trying to stay on it, but it's kind of like what a massage therapist does when they're kneading into a spot. I'm trying to stay on it, but just kind of massage into it, so to speak. After a good 15 to 20 seconds, let's rinse and repeat. Deep breath in, tighten the area, ease up off of it. Shouldn't be as painful for these 5 seconds. And then exhale, relax the leg, melt into this guy, put your pressure back into it. Start scrubbing around, start moving. There is no right or wrong. You're just trying to get blood flow and you're just trying to scrub into this thing a little bit. And for many of us, when we get to this point, after kind of the second go around, you might feel right now like, that's not nearly as painful. That feels a heck of a lot better. That feels like a 2 out of 10 now. I can, like it's relaxed. Cool. If so, you're done. Move on to the next leg or the next area of the body, whatever you're doing. But if it's still there, you might have a more stubborn knot. So you can do this sequence 5 times through, 6 times through, 8 times through, whatever, like kind of work on this thing anywhere up to 5 minutes and just keep rinsing and repeating this. And you will find that chances are somewhere within that 5 minutes, there's going to be this sudden, relax. Perfect. Okay, now I can move on. Now, if it's gotten to 5 minutes and that thing is just as intense as when you started, no matter what area of the body you're working on, probably tap out at that point. That means you found like a really, really dense piece of fascial gunk and you did good work. You probably broke it down a little bit. You got some good blood flow, but it's probably not ready to release completely. So just take it easy a little bit on that guy. So that would be my recommendation if you get to the 5-minute mark and it hasn't released. But for most of us, within that 1 to 5 minute window, somewhere in there, this thing is going to relax. Now, what I just did was I took this one little paint swab and I broke it up and I kind of like, for lack of a better term, tore up that tissue, but in a good way. Like, same kind of thing. Like, if I'm working out, if I'm doing a bunch of push-ups, I want to tear up this muscle because it allows it to hydrate and grow back leaner, bigger, stronger, whatever it is. That tearing is what allows the tissue to grow a little bit more. Well, that's what I just did in this mobility technique. I just kind of hyper focused in on one part of the tissue. I broke it down a little bit. So now it's going to hydrate, it's going to get more pliable and all that good stuff. So now it's a little bit more flexible. And now, after I've gotten some of this gunk out of there, like we talked about with that illustration where the paint swabs have now been broken up on this cotton shirt, now I can do an actual hamstring stretch, and I can get the benefits of this. Is actually going to elongate it. It's going to be pliable. It's going to have the ability for that tissue to stretch out. And that's how our clients, and how these handful of clients from this past months, their reassessments, that's how they were able to increase their range of motion on their hamstrings so drastically, where they hadn't before. No matter how much stretching they did, no matter how much dynamic warmth they did, their hamstrings always felt tight. Well, now it's a whole different ball game. So that's the secret. We got to get into the manual manipulation. We got to ungunk this body so that these tissues are pliable, and that's what actually increases our mobility. All right, guys, if you want any help on this stuff to understand what tissues in total are tight on you, like, hey, maybe it's beyond, like we talked about at the beginning, maybe it's not the hamstrings that are the cause of the hamstring tightness. Maybe there's stuff going on at the ankles. Maybe there's some stuff going on at the hips or other parts of the body. Or maybe there's a combination of a connection of things that are pulling on you. Well, my team and I would be happy to help. We offer 2 free calls for everybody. You can schedule up your free calls where you connect with us first over a quick phone call, and we download with what your goals are and where you're coming from, and what you want to achieve, obviously, and your injury background, all that kind of stuff. And then we do a follow-up call over video, again free, but we go through a number of full body patterns and analyses and see how the body is moving from head to toe, and test ranges of motion, see where any asymmetries are, and we'll point out, all right, these are your tight tissues. These are the things that you need to focus on. Here's a example schedule that you can take and manipulate this body on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and get this thing moving to full ranges of stable motion. Then here are your exercises to complement that kind of work. So all that's for free. And if you guys want to schedule those calls, we'll attach the link to the bottom of this video. Feel free to click on it, and you can see our calendar to schedule up one that works best for you. And then obviously, if you guys have any questions, any comments that you want, any future topics that you want us to cover, feel free to leave comments underneath the video. We're always looking for future topics to tackle, and we look forward to it. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.